Nick, it is a pleasure to be here. Happy to be here.
Yeah, glad to have you. Curt, could you give our listeners the quick 411 on you, where you're from, what you do, and kind of how you ended up here today? What do you have in store for us?
Yeah, well, I help business owners increase their authority brand exposure to the right clients to generate the right leads and the revenue from those right leads who turn into ideal clients. Now, that's what I do for work. That's what I get paid to do. But the important stuff is I'm a husband, I'm a father, we have 4 kids. And my personal mission is to help individuals live lives of freedom and fulfillment. And I do that by helping them build their business. A lot of people want to have a freedom lifestyle. Well, to do that, you need a freedom business. And to do that, I think the best way to do that is to build an authority brand that efficiently allows you the revenue to get where you want to go. And when you do that, your life is in alignment, not balance, not work-life balance, but alignment, where your relationships, your self-care, and your work flow. And to me, that's one of the pillars of building that freedom lifestyle.
So give us a little bit more about the freedom lifestyle. I think that'll be a point that'll kind of resonate with some of our listeners here. Everybody has their goals and aspirations of what they want to do.
Yeah, so the freedom lifestyle, I wrote a book, 5 Pillars of the Freedom Lifestyle. And the first pillar is superpowers. And it's where you unleash and unlock your innate talents with which you were born. You invest in them, turn them into strengths. I'm a Gallup certified strengths trainer. And then you combine them with your knowledge, your skills, your passion to turn them into your superpowers. The second pillar is vision. Having that clear vision for your life where you want to go and reverse engineering it from there instead of just kind of having these, I say a lot of people go through life like a pinball from objective to objective without a clear vision of where they want to go. Number 3 is alignment. We already talked about that. It's not work-life balance and balance. It's more alignment so everything works together. The 4th pillar is outcomes. You take that vision, you reverse engineer it so you know your 3 outcomes for every year, every month, every week, every day, instead of throwing spaghetti against the wall, seeing what sticks and moving toward it. And then the last pillar is flow. When you get in that state of flow, it's just like an athlete, a sprinter. You see them when, you watch the Olympics and they slow down the sprinters and you think they're tense, right? Because they're muscular, but then they slow it down and they look like rubber, right? Their faces are just going. It's because they're in that state of flow. And when you get in that state of flow, it's not about the hustle and the grind. It's about doing what you do best, having those clear goals, knowing where you're going. Instead of just like working up a sweat and getting that blood and chopping down 100 trees, it's like, you only need to chop down 3 over here. Why don't you work on that? And so it's the cumulative effect of the first 4 pillars.
And how does one start? How do they start towards that lifestyle of being able to really be productive?
Yeah, well, they hire me. No, the first piece is really, and it's something that I'll ask people is, where do you want, if you wave the magic wand and could be transported tomorrow magically into the life you want to live, what does that look like? And it is a hard question. I've had people pay me thousands of dollars. I ask that question, I never hear from them again because it's hard to answer because we've been conditioned to build our lives based on societal expectations, the expectations of our parents, the expectations of teachers, bosses, whatever it is, rather than saying, what do I really want? And we've also been conditioned to think answering that question is somehow selfish. And so we end up, in many times, going through life thinking that we're selfless, but because we're not investing in ourselves, we're crappy husbands, crappy parents. We don't build a business that has a positive impact on other people. So when you first invest in yourself, it's like the old cliche, put the oxygen mask on before you put it on your kids when you're on the plane. It's the same in life. If you're not the best of who you are, then you're not giving others the best of who you are and the positive impact on their lives, which bringing it to the business equation, I think that's what the definition of a business should be, having a positive impact on the life of someone else, whether you're selling golf balls, bowling balls, or high-end coaching.
And I think the conditioning is really important too, because I talk about a lot myself. I think you just realize once you get older, maybe some people never realize how much they've been conditioned throughout their life. And even, a lot of people say, well, how do you take that risk to open up your own business? Like, I'll get that question a lot. And I answer, well, don't listen to everybody else. You have to condition yourself to listen to that voice that's in your head and really determine there's a couple voices in your head. So you got to pick the right one, and I think the conditioning, I think, is just, I'm glad you brought that up. I think that's such a big point of we're conditioned to what's normal and what's weird, and that it's not good to be weird. But you know, that's where the creativity comes in, right?
Absolutely. And folks like Dr. Bruce Lipton, who's a cell biologist, and Dr. Joe Dispenza, I mean, they talk about this all the time, that especially between the ages of 1 and 7, you are conditioned in, I believe they call it the theta state, which is basically where your software is most conditioned to be programmed. And so you go through it, and so things you hear around you, things your parents watch on TV, if that's in there, you may not realize it, but it's soaking in. And then you add on to that everything that you hear in your teens and everything you hear in your 20s and your 30s, and you get to your 40s or 50s, and you have all this conditioning. And I tell people, it's like, if you're the type of person who watches Shark Tank and says, those fat cats, don't they have enough money? It's probably because your parents were watching some show or listening to something that made you think that and condition that. And when you realize that other people are conditioned, it also allows you to have empathy and not get mad at those people. Like my wife and I, we homeschool. We live our version of the freedom lifestyle. And it took a long time for us to uncondition. I mentioned to you offline, we sold all our possessions. We sold our stuff, and we're just traveling around having a freedom lifestyle. We're loving it. We're doing things we've never done before. There are some people who think we're out of our minds crazy. And instead of me getting mad and try to explain to them, here's why we do, and here's the statistics, and here's this, I just show them. You know, and I have empathy that they are conditioned differently than I am. And you know, starting a business, same thing. I mean, a lot of people quit their jobs and start a business. People are like, why are you doing that? You have a bachelor's in this, but you're starting a business over here. What are you doing? That's their conditioning talking. And once you realize that, you can just kind of smile, laugh it off, realize that they're in a different state, and then just go show them how it's done. Then they'll come along, if you even care if they come along or not, really.
Yeah, I think that's a lot of it. And I think a lot of it too is trying to figure out yourself and like some self exploration of, hey, this is where I'm at right now. This is where I want to be. But you're right. It just listening to everybody else can be really tough. And I also like when, you know, people are saying if your goals are to, you know, drive this certain car, why are you listening to a guy who drives a Toyota? Or if your goals are to open this type of business, you know, why are you asking? It's really tough because sometimes maybe you do want to take advice from your brother or your family, but you know, maybe it's the neighbor down the street that has a successful business that you never talked to is who you really should be talking to. You gotta be careful where you take your advice from.
Yeah. And it's right. It sounds contradictory of, listen to other people and soak it in. But I remember when I had a 7-figure public relations and ad agency, and I built that over 14 years. And I woke up one morning and it's not like I realized it. I knew it, but was in denial for probably 7 or 8 years. I hated the person I had become. I grew to hate my clients. I grew to hate my business. I hated what I was doing. I was working with a lot of large corporations and nonprofits. My real passion is entrepreneurship and what drives our economy. And I woke up one Tuesday morning and I was supposed to have that week off. It was Thanksgiving week. And the calls were coming in, hop on the conference call, send us the email. I'm like, I have the week off. And I said, I'm done. I shut down my agency, 7-figure agency overnight. And people are like, well, why didn't you get it ready to sell? I've talked to people who are in my same position and they know when you're done, you're done. And smartly, I should have started that runway to sell it 3 years earlier, but I didn't. And so by that point I was done. And you know, when I did that, it again went back to conditioning. But I started coaching and doing business coaching and consulting. And it was interesting because I got my Gallup strength certification. And then you get in a Facebook group, right, with other coaches. And I'm like, I'm going to learn it from them. And I'm getting in there and I'm like, oh my gosh. It was this echo chamber of charge this much per hour and this. And it was so under the value of what they should charge. And I like charging hourly for me, I think Satan invented hourly rates to mess with business owners, you know? So I got out of there. My wife's a speech therapist. And when this whole thing happened with COVID, like, starting to do it virtual instead of in person, she got on the chat boards or whatever, not chat boards. I'm dating myself, you know, the Facebook groups. Right. And people are like, oh yeah, you can't do virtual. And I said, get out of there. Get out of there. There's advice And then there's just limited beliefs and an echo chamber of that where everyone comes to believe. So my wife went and created her own thing, and now she's doing virtual. There comes a point where you got to take advice and say, thank you for that.
Right.
Know when to say, I'm not listening and keep going. And knowing the difference between good advice and just limiting beliefs, it can be tough.
And I think that that's where different relationships come into play too. You know, the relationships, you know, you can count on that you do get good advice. And I always say that when there's times in your life where, you know, maybe you want somebody to kind of make you feel good, or almost like, you know, like, man, I need that pity party right now. You know who to call, right? But when you need somebody to tell you to go for it, you know which friend or which voice on the airline is going to tell you to go for it too, and that's who you pick up and call. So I think you got to be careful you don't fool yourself sometimes too, that into thinking, you know, this is what I want to hear. Like, really, you know what you're going to hear before you pick up the phone a lot of times too. So I think a lot of it's really being deep with yourself and understanding, you know, where you really stand.
Yeah,
I think that's what you're talking about too, is really knowing what you really want.
absolutely. And when you have that strong foundation, it's easier then to withstand the pity party company. And
Yep.
Marcus Aurelius Anderson, author, great guy, and he was someone who was paralyzed training to deploy in the U.S. Army for a year from the neck down. He broke his back, died twice. And he wrote a book called Adversity, The Gift of Adversity. And one of the things he told me is, listen, mediocrity loves company, not just misery, but mediocrity. And when you sometimes can't pick up on the mediocrity, like you said, if you don't have that strong center yourself.
Yep.
and have those dreams and thinking big. But again, if you grow up in a community that is conditioned, it's like the Truman Show, right? You come to believe it's all real. And then one day, maybe, you know, you're taken out of the matrix. I'm combining, you know, metaphors here, and then nothing looks the same after that. But you got to be willing to take that pill.
I think you're absolutely right. So I guess my question to you would be, so you went from having this 7-figure public agency that you're doing really well at, and then you completely realize you're not happy. So you try to reinvent yourself, which you've done very successfully. What was the process of doing that, and how important was it to brand yourself, and how did branding become such an important part of what you did? Like, how do you start with basically, you know, maybe some people see you in one light, they see you as the PR guy or in the public, you know, running your agency, but how do you reinvent yourself into coach and consultant, and how important is branding, and how does one differentiate between branding and marketing?
Yeah. So, you know, over the 14 years I had my agency, one of the biggest pet peeves I had working with big companies, large corporations, and large trade associations was that they talk about branding, but really they're interested in just big numbers. How many clicks, how many impressions, how many ads, and these things. And yeah, every once in a while they'll do polling to say, oh, we moved the needle, right? But I remember sitting in this meeting and someone's like, you know, when Google Plus came out, what's our Google Plus strategy? And I'm like, oh my gosh, it's not a strategy, it's a tool, you know? One of the things, and they all had enough money that they didn't care. We're just going to buy enough. And so you get lazy. So I didn't like that. So I bring that up because it's interesting when I decided, hey, you know, I had built, and I was pretty darn good at sales with corporations and associations and doing these things and building the company. I decided to throw everything out the window that I knew of how I built my company. And I fell into that trap. It's the law of big numbers. I hired a Facebook ads guru, and we're going to do a webinar, and I'm going to hit that easy button, and leads and clients are going to start rolling in. And I spent about $15,000, $16,000 over a month and a half. And it was like, I got no clients and barely a lead, because it was cold water in my face. What I realized was, wait a second. I'm doing the exact opposite of what I would tell my clients to do, which is you got to build that foundation. I didn't have my clear message. I hadn't identified my ideal client. So I went back to that foundation, started identifying my ideal clients, what I call my impact story, which is that one sentence that clearly communicates the impact and I started the process of communicating that story. And I built, after that first month and a half of testing and falling on my face, 6 figures in the first year. It's continued to grow, grew into keynotes. Now I do corporate workshops, things like that, in addition to working with individual small business owners. And that branding and marketing, when I think of marketing, I think of tools and tactics and things to get your name out there. But a brand, I joke around, and people confuse it with sales too. Or I'll say, do you have a branding problem? No, I got a logo. I got a website. Well, then what's your problems? I don't know my ideal client, and I have trouble communicating my message to my ideal client. It's like, you may also have a marketing problem, you may have a branding problem, and a sales problem, right? It's that it all goes hand in hand. And so really, to me, building an authority brand is, every business starts out as a thought. I don't care what the business is, what you're selling. That thought turns into an idea. Your business is the manifestation of those ideas, but within those ideas lies your authority. And those ideas are about, I don't care if you have a competitor that has almost same or similar product or service. Your ideas are what make you unique, because I could sell widgets and Jim and Jane can also sell basically the same widget. But how we provide the service to our customers, our ideas for specifically how those widgets can be used by those customers, are all unique. So within those ideas lies your authority. And when you get into there and you identify, listen, which of my ideal clients? I just talked to someone on the phone, and she sells to realtors. And I said, right, but in the Charleston, South Carolina area. So there's like 8,500 realtors. What does that realtor look like? What's their age? What's their lot in life? What's their experience? I have 5 pages of questions where we get down on the ideal client. And then what is that positive impact they want from you? Once you start looking at that, a lot of people ignore that and they go right into the tools and the marketing tools. We're going to do ads. We're going to do this. It's garbage in, garbage out if you don't have that foundation.
So it's so important to have we spent a whole podcast talking about avatars. And I think that's what you're saying, the ideal customer. I mean, it's really important. And, when we had our expert on, I was telling her, I said, there was a time where when I first heard it, I spent a lot of money to go to a seminar, and I was there, and it wasn't personal development. It was all about your business. And, the first day was all about, a lot about branding was what it was going to be about. So I expected to hear kind of what you thought, or what you mentioned. A lot of people think when they hear branding, website, logo, stuff like that. But it was really like a 4-hour crash course on avatars and how to fill it out and how to really, like you said, 5 pages getting deep down to who is your client. And, I remember having our expert on, and I said to her, I said, well, I was like, well, I spent all this money to go to a seminar, and I guess I got to try it, right? Like, I can't just go home from the seminar and be like, well, spent all this money and I'm not going to try and figure out who my customer is. And we had a big meeting with all our managers. We broke out the teams, and we realized we had 3 different customers, because that's the other thing. You maybe don't always have just one, and then we spent a lot of time breaking it down. And then anytime that we try to market, that's who we pull out. We market to that person. And, and we design our brand around what that person would like. And I think that's really important. I think that's kind of figuring out the nuts and bolts of it, but it's not as simple as just calling up the radio salesman and saying, hey, give me some ads for the radio. And then they say, okay, well, we'll send back your ad. And they send it back. You're like, I kind of like how that listens. They just designed your everything. You didn't really tell them that, hey, this is what I want the ad to be. This is who I want to go after. Like, you have to be the director of your business, right?
Exactly. And we usually come up with 2, but like you said, 3. I have 3 avatars for me, but we come up with a platinum and a gold. And we with our clients in our boot camps, in my one-on-one, we have them, pick who's your favorite historical figure or sports figure. And it's like, okay, so it's Michael and Larry. One person had Michael Jordan and Larry Bird. And you just remember that. Are you speaking to Michael today? When you pick up the phone, are you speaking to Michael or are you speaking to Larry? Because I work with a lot of financial advisors. if you have someone who's 60, wakes up every morning, checks every one of their stocks and writes it down, and doesn't take vacations because they want to spend that extra or save that extra $500, they're of a very different behavioral style and mindset and lot in life than you're selling to someone who's 40, doesn't trust the market, only wants to invest in crypto or silver and gold. And you have to know who you're speaking to. And that's what happens a lot when you don't know who you're speaking to, you don't know the impact that client wants. And so we do what's called verbally vomit on them, where we call up and it's all about us. It's all about my bells, my whistles, my features, my resume, my process, how the sausage is made. And the client's like, I just got a whole bunch of bullet points, but I still don't know what I get for my money. But instead you go and you're like, you ask questions,
Right.
You figure out what the client wants, which is many times different than what they need. And just listening. I just think the biggest branding weapon is your two ears. We often think it's our lips, but really it's our two ears. And you don't talk over your clients. You don't drown them out. You listen to what they want. And oftentimes they'll give you the keys to if you just ask a few questions, they give you the keys to the kingdom. But we write proposals based for what they need. And the client's like, this isn't anything I wanted because you didn't listen.
I think we run into that a lot. I know I get treated like that a lot. Somebody will come in and I'll say, I'll make this real easy for you. This is what I'm looking for. And then they come back and they tell me what, their sales manager told them they need to, get the incentive for that month. And it's like, okay, I tried to simplify it for you. This is the way you sell me, is sell me my needs, not your, what's going to put you on the company trip next month or whatever it is, And I think there's a lot of truth to that. And so what are you seeing now with COVID and the mindset of business owners and quote unquote COVID fatigue? Like how are business owners are so much different from a year ago today. I think we're battle tested. We're battle tested before, but I think now it's like, I don't know. I feel like we went through that. We go through anything, and I think we're not over it yet. Who knows how long this is going to be? I still think it's going to be a good while. But how do you talk to the business owners that maybe having problems with just the mental toughness of what's been going on?
Yeah, I think a lot of it goes back to becoming comfortable with the tools that we had been using. And so a lot of folks, say financial advisors, I don't know what to do because I'm used to in-person one-on-one meetings and sitting across the desk and going to networking events. And when you build your entire branding strategy, and I use that in quotes, around tools, then when those tools change or go away, what do? When you have a strong foundation, Ernest Hemingway, the quality of his novels had nothing to do with the type of typewriter he used. A typewriter is a tool just like LinkedIn or Facebook or whatever. Think of all those people who built their businesses just on Facebook ads or Facebook pages, I should say. And then Facebook took away and made it basically pay to play. These companies, $1 million companies, went out of business. If you don't have that strong foundation, when you do have a strong foundation, the principles I teach worked 25 years ago when I started into this business. They're true now, and they're going to be true 25 years from now. Whether we have LinkedIn or Facebook or phones, or Elon Musk has computers, tapped into our brains, right? With Neuralink or whatever it is. When you build the foundation, it's basic communication principles. We talked about listening, asking questions. What does the client want? And we've just become so in tune with the tools, whether that's networking event, whether that's just, it's a numbers game. And I'm going to go to so many networking events that people are definitely going to come to me. By the way, I see a lot with referrals. Oh, up until January or whatever, March, I was 90% referral based, but my referrals dried up. And that's it. And now I don't know what to do. Okay, referrals can make you lazy, right? Because you don't have that branding and sales process. So I think what this is going to teach and should teach people moving forward is to build that strong brand foundation. Know your impact story, know who your ideal client is, build a process to reach those people. But often we start with the tools and the tactics first. And when you do that and a pandemic starts, you're screwed. right? Build the foundation first, and then no matter what happens, okay, I can't go to networking events, I'm going to pick up the phone. We do scripting, phone scripting with our clients. And they're like, that's sales, that's not branding. It's become a big part of branding now, right? Because you can't do certain things. You can't do in-person events. There's a lot, I do a lot of keynote speeches. There's a lot of speakers out there who are going to be wiped out this year because they only relied on speakers bureaus and word of mouth and referrals. And now they don't know what to do because they've never had to sell. And when you have that sales process, people up until March were declaring the phone dead. The phone is dead. It's all about social selling. You know, and now people are learning, oh my gosh, I got to learn how to pick up the phone and call people.
I think, do you think it's going to stay? Do you think like even once the masks go away, if they ever do, and then, you know, that things get back to quote unquote normal, like, do you think that there's going to be such thing as in-person meetings? Do you think people are going to keep doing Zoom calls and keep doing phone conversations? And do you think it's going to stay? Like, has the landscape shifted?
It's interesting in terms of, so, you know, my home base is Charleston, South Carolina. We just spent time in Georgia.
My daughter goes to school in Charleston. Sorry to cut you off there.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
It is a different world down there. And I'm in Chicago right now than it is up here.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying this as part of a COVID discussion, value judgment thing. It's just a different world. I mean, you go to the small suburb here and people are walking down the streets in masks. In the South, they're not. People down there are starting to have in-person meetings now. Someone just told me, oh yeah, we usually have 1,200 people at the prayer breakfast and now we can only have 600. So those things are happening. And so you think back to 9/11. And I remember it clear as day. Is anything going to go back to normal? Is it? Took a year or two. People forgot about it.
Yeah.
The crash of 2007, 2008, people forget about it. Every 10 years or so, between 8 and 12 years, there's something. And I think when you realize that, you build your business in a way where you are adaptable. And I think that we had a decade of really good times. And the problem was people sit back and say, good times, these are going to last forever. And they forget 2007, 2008. I mean, I was in a panic. Oh, I'm going to lose my job. I'm going to lose it. You can count on it. Every 8 to 12 years, something's going to happen. And it's amazing how quickly we go back to the way it was. And whatever happened then, oh yeah, it went away. No one talks about it anymore. You look in human history and we've had pandemics. How many people knew about the Hong Kong flu? I mean, I grew up, I was born in the 70s, grew up in the 80s. I'd never heard about that till last year.
Yeah.
You know, people just forgot about it. People forget about these things. People forget about prior generation sacrifices. And now we're, you know, this gets into an education thing. We don't teach history. I mean, I think 3/4, it said, of people between 30 and 40 or 25 and 30 didn't know what the Holocaust was. You know, are people in 40 years going to know about what happened today? Humans are resilient and we go on. And I can't stand the term new normal because that just accepts it. And I don't want to accept it. You know, be safe, but things are going to get back to normal. And quicker than we think, I believe. And I think that what we're very good at is trying to slow things getting back to normal, but they will. And nature has an interesting way of helping us get there.
What do you see business owners facing as their biggest challenges to start a business? Like if it's somebody that like, hey, I'm ready to finally take the leap, what's the biggest challenges that they face?
Well, it's interesting because just kind of back to what we just discussed, for the past 2 or 3 years pre-COVID, the biggest challenge was things are good. I have a secure job. I really hate it, but it's secure. And I want to start this business, and they wouldn't do it. Well, now, between March and now, right, a lot of them learned I wasn't that secure. I might as well have gone for it. I might as well have built it. And now you're seeing this explosion. I've seen some statistics of entrepreneurship because people now have the time to do it. So you talk about the silver linings of COVID and all these things. I think for one, people are like, listen, I was pushed off the cliff. I have to fly. I have to learn to fly now. And so some of that, I think comfort can be a big impediment to moving forward. And we had a lot of comfort for the last 10 years. And until you get to that part, pain is a great motivator. And actual pain is a bigger motivator than the pursuit of happiness. And so often the perceived pain of change is a greater motivator than wanting something. And so I saw that over the last 10 years.
So it can work both ways is what you're saying.
Exactly.
It can motivate you to do and it can motivate you not to do.
Exactly. Because people were scared of the fear of change. And so they didn't do it. And now they're scared of survival. And so they have to do it. So when you're thrown off the Titanic without a life preserver, it's amazing how quickly you learn to swim.
Yeah, no, I think you're absolutely right. I think that's, I always talk about pain being something that can push you towards being able to go after your goal, but you're absolutely right. Pain can really push you to not do it as well too. If it's
perceived pain.
Perceived pain. Yes. Yeah, absolutely. And so if we've got this new business owner and, there's so much out there as far as like mentors and coaches and, how do they decide when they really need to bring somebody on to coach them or to get them started? Or is it more to get somebody to the next level?
If someone's looking to hire someone to help them, first look, have they done it? I don't care about certifications, degrees, where they went to school. Have they done it before? My first business strategist was a successful business owner, had been president. He was president of Dippin' Dots, the ice cream, that space age ice cream, and was a VP and a president of at a Procter & Gamble subsidiary. Yeah, I know, he knows what he's doing. And that's what I look for with those coaches. I have a sales mentor who does 150 sales calls every day. Still, he's in his 60s and does it. I know he does what he says he does. But beyond that, there are a lot of people, specifically when it comes to branding, who call themselves branding coaches and strategists. And really what they are simply people who happen to have some videos go viral. And so now they're quote unquote strategists. What those people are is I call them vanity vendors. I'm going to get you lots of likes and views and I'm going to feed your dopamine. And over 6 months, you're going to be so happy. But then at the end of the 6 months, those people realize those likes and views, I try to take them to the bank, but they wouldn't take them as a deposit, right? Look for someone who is going to help you with timeless principles. Those timeless principles that were true 25, 50 years ago and are true now, with the knowledge that we're going to take today. If I'm going to communicate with you right now, we're using Zoom. That wasn't around 5, 10 years ago. I use LinkedIn a lot. We train people how to use LinkedIn as an absolutely incredible, endless lead generation tool. Not automated leads and things like that, but how to use it truly and create content. LinkedIn may be gone in 3 years, 5 years. I don't know, who knows, right? But you still have that foundation to go on to use whatever tool you have. If there's a coach or a consultant or a quote unquote strategist who is leading with tools and is leading with, I'm going to get you a lot of views, ask them, but what's the bottom line impact? What am I going to walk away with? Likes and views and a pretty face and people see me online? Or am I going to walk away with a foundational, strong business that I can scale and grow? If they can't answer that and don't have things to back that up, haven't done it, then run the other way.
What are some of those timeless principles?
Well, we talked about some of them, but I have what I call the 4 pillars of an authority brand. And the first is attention, but that's where people start and often stop. It's about the likes and the views and the vanity metrics. Number 2 is accuracy. Finding out who that ideal client is. We talked about the avatar, really figuring out who it is. Number 3 is alignment. And alignment is, it's not just about what you do, it's about the positive impact you provide. So you align what you do with that impact. And then the final is authenticity. You start communicating that. You show up day after day, communicating that impact to your ideal clients So they see you, you build that know, like, and trust factor, you bring in some third-party credibility, then you're cooking, then that attention, we start first because people are expecting it. Then you start looking at ways to get that attention with the right message to the right clients. Then you're in business. Whatever tools are there at your disposal at that time, you utilize. And so I'm tools agnostic because they come and they go. And they remember Snapchat, and TikTok now is banned. Gosh, I think today, and as we tape this, I think they're all going in front of Congress. Congress wants to regulate this, that. People are buying each other out. Who knows what's going to be here? And if you build your entire company around specific tools, then you're putting your eggs in someone else's basket. It's just like if you build your entire company only around networking events. Well, what happens? No one would have predicted this would have happened. But even beyond that, what if you get sick? What if you have to learn to communicate that message to the right client, no matter what happens, no matter what tools we have, no matter, I'm used to doing in-person keynote speeches. Guess what? Now I'm doing 2 weeks ago, I did a virtual keynote for 50 people in the Cayman Islands via Zoom. I never would, when 2020 started, wouldn't have predicted that.
So what's next for you and your business, Curt?
Yeah, continuing to grow and really help people we do quarterly boot camps. We, last year I did a lot of in-person. We had spring boot camps planned in person. And when that didn't happen, guess what? We said, all right, we're just going to make them virtual. So we're doing quarterly virtual boot camps. They're 6-week boot camps where we work you through the 4 pillars. Your ideal clients, really getting down to that avatar. What is that impact story? I had 8 people in my last boot camp, and they all started with they were dead sure of their impact story. Not a single person ended that boot camp with the same impact story they came in with. And then put together that lead generation process. So you have that toolkit, whether you want to start selling tires next year or keep doing what you're doing, it's those basic principles. So we do those quarterly boot camps, and then I do one-on-one coaching with entrepreneurs, and then corporate workshops, keynotes. The keynotes are coming back now, even though they're virtual, and doing those is wonderful because I have 4 kids. I love being a dad, love being a husband. And as much as I would love to travel to the Cayman Islands, I got to do a keynote and get paid for it from my living room in the mountains in Blue Ridge, Georgia. Did that for an hour and then went and played with my kids. We went kayaking later that day. So helping me live my freedom lifestyle is important. But to do that, you need your freedom business. And to do that, you need an authority brand. And helping other people build that is really fulfilling to me.
So Curt, where can people find you if they want more of you?
Yeah, I got a real simple way. If you take out your smartphone and you text the word Youthority, Y-O-U-Thority, to the number 55678, you'll get an automated link texted back to you. There's a number, I think there's 4 free webinars right now, 4 pillars of building an authority brand. There's a LinkedIn webinar up there, how to get started at optimizing your LinkedIn profile. There's a link where you can subscribe to my podcast, the Authority Brand Podcast, and there's a link to schedule a strategy call with me. But a lot of free goodies there, all free. You can also, I'm different. I love speaking on the phone. I make 10 to 20 calls a day. Text me, 843-300-5075. And I'll text you back. I'll call you back. And then my website is merc.enterprises. But the easiest way is if you text Youthority to 55678, get a ton of free goodies. And, it all costs nothing.
Now it's time to solve the equation to Curt's success. Ready for 7 rapid fire questions, Curt?
Fire them away.
Okay. Best seminar or teaching you've ever been to?
Joe Peachy's Sales Boot Camp. Peachy and Peachy.
Favorite item you bought recently under $100?
Wim Hof's new book, The Wim Hof Method.
Name an idol or hero of yours that you've met in person.
My father.
Favorite book to give as a gift?
The Tao Te Ching.
Something you do every morning before you brush your teeth.
Breathing exercises.
Place you go to decompress and reset.
Wherever my back deck is at that point.
Curt, thanks so much for being on the show. We really appreciate it. We thought it was fantastic. And we're looking forward to everybody getting to know more about you. So thanks so much for being on.
Thank you so much. Had a great time. It was my pleasure.